Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another video with On Point Politics, your number one stop for all things polling and election analysis in the United States. And today, we're going to talk about why Donald Trump won the 2024 presidential election. Hit the like button and subscribe for more content just like this. Make sure to go ahead and follow me on X in the description down below and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any other videos like this. And so, as of right now, Donald Trump had a pretty big victory against Kamala Harris. If we can see right here, Donald Trump managed to win 312 electoral college votes to Harris's 226 electoral college votes. And it was a pretty big blowout in the electoral college compared to the last two elections. Obviously, people have had way bigger electoral college margins, but Donald Trump actually managed to do a couple things he didn't do last time. He managed to flip all of the swing states he had won in 2016, besides Nebraska's second congressional district, and he managed to flip the state of Nevada, which he had not done in either election in 2016 or 2020. He also managed to win the popular vote and even broke his voting record total from 2020. He actually is now at about 76.4 million votes, which is about roughly 2 million votes higher than what he was before. And we are at 98.1% of all ballots counted. We are still waiting for outstanding ballots from the state of California. But other than that, pretty much everything is set in stone for the presidential election. As of right now, we can see that the country basically swung super Republican. We actually see here, Donald Trump made huge gains in a state like Florida, really big gains in a place like this. For example, Miami-Dade ended up shifting 19 points to the right from where it was in 2020. That's a humongous shift. 54% for Donald Trump to Harris's 44% in Miami-Dade County, all the way down here at the bottom. You can see it right here, Miami-Dade, all the way at the bottom. Big Hispanic urban center, and Donald Trump majorly improved there. He was able to win in Duval County, where Jacksonville is. We also saw him pick off Pinellas County by 3. He won Hillsborough by about 6, and actually came pretty close in West Palm Beach, where he lost it by about a point. He also came somewhat close in Orlando, Orange County. He was able to only lose it by about 12 to 13 points this election cycle, and he won the state of Florida by about 13 points this time around. A state like Texas, huge shifts for Donald Trump. And actually, right here, this is very interesting. In the state of Texas, what I saw that was very fascinating in the state was this. This is very fascinating. In the border counties down here by the southern border, Donald Trump made the most gains that any Republican has in history as of right now in southern Texas. Just humongous gains for the GOP. We could see that shift map if we were to, in fact, go to the shift map and actually see what it looks like. Look at those shifts down there. He managed to gain humongous amount of points in some of these counties. Webb County, 25 points to the right from where it was even in 2020, where he had actually already made gains nonetheless. In a place over here, for example, Dimmitt County, 21 more points Republican. Zapata County, 17 points more Republican. Duval County, 13. So just these humongous shifts to the right. Starr County, he flipped it. It was a 16-point margin for Donald Trump this time around. 21 points more Republican. It didn't even go to him last cycle, and he had still made gains from the last election. Kennedy County, huge shift there. Barely any people, but still huge shifts in the southern border counties. He managed to basically flip all those counties pretty massively. You could see them right here, not necessarily in color, but you see that he was able to flip some of these very narrowly. The only two that stayed was Jim Hogg County by a couple points and Brooks County by about 9 points, 8 points as well. Those are the only two Democrat counties by the border right now. Other than that, almost all of the border counties are pretty much all Republican now. And he made huge gains in Houston. He made huge gains in the Dallas area. He managed to flip back Tarrant County, which he had lost in 2020 very narrowly. He now flipped it back into his column. And places like Iowa and Ohio, they just moved completely to the right as well. And funny enough about Iowa, it was around a 13 point victory for Donald Trump, which, unlike what most people expected to happen, if you were watching mainstream media news, you were seeing that Ann Seltzer, the gold standard of Iowa polling, was actually saying that Kamala Harris was going to win the state by 3 points. And it just came out that she's actually retiring now after a big miss in predicting the Kamala Harris win in Iowa. Now, granted, she's saying, oh, I actually decided to retire before that, so it doesn't really matter. But guys, we know that's not true. She's obviously using it as a cop-out. It was a terrible miss that she had in that election. She literally had Harris up 47 to 44% with likely voters, and it ended up being Trump with 56 to 43%. It was a complete miss. Kamala Harris underperformed by 3 points, and Donald Trump outperformed his vote share by literally 9 points. It was a disastrous, not even 9 points. That's actually that's a way bigger outperformance. That's like a 14-point outperformance from that. That was absolutely ridiculous. It's about like 12, actually. You see it right there. It's about a 12 percentage point outperformance. But we even see, like in these states, Georgia, this is another key battleground state that was very hotly contested, but we see, the rural areas just absolutely moved more Republican. The Atlanta suburbs, funny enough, actually moved to the left, but if you look at the inner city parts of Atlanta, they actually moved Republican. So it wasn't the Black voters that actually moved the Atlanta area left. It's the suburban rich white voter that Kamala Harris did better with the cycle that's actually moving that area to the left. And you had a lot of people move to a place like Georgia, which the census actually undercounted, by the way. And we'll talk about that in a second. I actually have very interesting points about that as well. But we even see here, Georgia, just a absolute 2.5-ish point win. Donald Trump held on to North Carolina again. Not as good as 2016. I think he won it by 3.4%, but still pretty decent performance. Arizona, this is the one that shocked everybody. That I essentially was the only person who was even close to predicting this margin. Trump's up in the state by about 5.5-ish, which is a pretty good performance. And we can now say that the 0.3 percentage point win for Joe Biden in the state of Arizona was a fluke election in which that happened. Biden just did very well with suburban voters and did significantly better with non-college whites. That was a big reason as to why he was able to do that. But if we look now, Maricopa ended up swinging 6 points to the right. He ended up winning Maricopa by about 3 points. Kamala Harris didn't even crack 1 million votes. She cracked 980K votes in Maricopa County. And a big part of this was immigration. This was a big issue in Arizona. The campaigns both realized by the time of like late September, early October, that Arizona was basically in Donald Trump's column by the time we were getting there. And we actually see that the group that Trump improved the most with was Hispanics. And out of the two states that were the most Hispanic, Arizona and Nevada had the biggest shifts towards the right. Nevada ended up shifting roughly like 6 points to the right. It was a 2.5-point victory for Joe Biden last cycle. Now it's like a 3.6 percentage point win for Donald Trump. And a lot of that came from Las Vegas area, where he actually ended up gaining 7 points in the county. He only lost Clark by 2 percentage points. This is a big working class minority area with a lot of food service industry workers, and that no tax on tips thing really ended up helping him out in the state. And Washoe was also very competitive. It seems like Kamala Harris is going to win it by about a point or so, but that's where most of the population is. And of course, he maxed out in a lot of places across the country. So that's why you're kind of seeing that. But even in a place like Mineral County, he outperformed there by 10 points. Now, granted, not a lot of votes, but still a pretty big shift in some of the rural areas across the country. Pennsylvania, this is the one that really managed to put him over the top at 270. If he had won Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia and kept all his 2020 states, he was going to become the 47th president. And that's exactly how it was called on election night. And we see here in a place like Pennsylvania, a lot of us were talking about this. This is something that a lot of people didn't really want to hit on, but this is something that I think is very crucial to talk about. In a place like Pennsylvania, you see the biggest shifts for Donald Trump were in the eastern part of the state. Now, why am I specifying this? This is the area that Biden actually did better in the 2020 election compared to 2016 from Hillary's performance, because he was a Catholic and he was kind of able to use that to his advantage in some parts of the country and really outperformed in the Northeast. That's why he did significantly better than Hillary Clinton or Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris actually underperformed in some areas, even compared to Hillary Clinton. And so we see here that his biggest improvements in Pennsylvania came from the eastern part of the state, even more so than some of these, more rural areas. We actually see here, if we were to look at a place like Lackawanna, that county, if we look at the shift there, that county moved 6 points to the right. That's Scranton, Joe. This is from where Joe Biden supposedly was, even though he was born in Delaware and became a senator from Delaware the rest of his life. But 6 point movement towards Donald Trump in this county. Completely huge shifts. Looking at this, another Luzerne County. This is where Scott Presler was really hammering in that ballot chasing. Look at that, 5 points. Look at this, Bucks County, another county where Scott Presler was really just going all in. 4-point shift, 4.5-point shift towards Donald Trump. Chester County, another big ballot chasing area. All the areas where they were really chasing ballots, this is where they made the biggest gains. Monroe County, 7-point shift to Donald Trump. So he improved across the board in the state of Pennsylvania. The only areas that moved more left were some of these suburban areas like Cumberland County, Perry, Union County, even Center County moved 2 points to the right from the last cycle. And a lot of work was done there, not just by, not just this area, Center County. That's where UPenn is. That wasn't just Scott Presler. That was also Charlie Kirk and TPUSA. They were, or TPUS Action, I believe that's what it's called. They were doing a lot of momentum stuff in Center County. They were doing a lot of work in this county. And so that's definitely where you're going to be seeing really, really big shifts going into the future. If Republicans keep targeting these young voters, that's where you're really going to see that. Michigan, this is very interesting. The biggest shift in the entire state. Lizzo came out, we're going to make the country like Detroit. Detroit said, hell no, ended up swinging 9 points to the right. The biggest shift out of any county in the entire state ended up being Detroit, Michigan. They said no to Lizzo. They said yes to Donald Trump. And they actually ended up moving 9 points right. Donald Trump cracked 34% in Detroit. He ended up getting 34% of the vote in Detroit. Completely unbelievable performance in the state. I believe he's up by 1.4% in the state. This is his best performance here, actually. We could see Kent was pretty close. She only won it by about 5. Flint, really close. Or Genesee County, only 4 points. Macomb, he won there by 14 points. Humongous victory. I think he basically either did better or matched his 2016 performance in Macomb. We see Washtenaw County, a pretty big win for Kamala Harris, but still was an improvement. And we see Wayne County, the biggest shift in the entire state. The part where Elizabeth said, we're going to be like the whole country. Kamala's going to make the country like Detroit. And look at that. They ended up swinging the most Republican out of any county in the entire state. And so that's the story for Michigan. Again, 10x votes was very present in Michigan. That was definitely a big factor as well. And looking at Wisconsin, which actually surprised me quite a bit, the state did not move as much to the right as I thought it was. And the polling was a lot better this cycle than I initially expected. We can see here that a lot of these wild counties continue to move left. This is very, very left trending areas. But we even see a place like Milwaukee, despite it trending to the left, actually moved with the state at large. So that is very good news for Republicans going into the 2028 election. Door County actually ended up staying with Kamala Harris, despite being more of a swing county of the past couple of cycles, which is interesting. And we even see here, Ashland was only a 5-point win for Kamala. Portage was very close. Very, very close. 1.2 percentage point margin of victory for Kamala Harris. Very, very close. Looking at La Crosse, she won that by about 9 points. Eau Claire County won by about 11. And that I believe is similar to Biden's performance, a little bit similar. We see Donald Trump almost cracked 20% in that county. I believe that's like a majority Asian county in Wisconsin. So that's also very, very fascinating as well. Iowa County got a little bit closer. Dane County, Donald Trump still improved here. I believe it or not. He improved by about a point. So again, very interesting. And he made gains. This is the part that I was saying he had to improve here. This is where I predicted he was going to make the most gains, and was the western part of Wisconsin. That's where he had lost a lot of ground in the 2020 cycle against Joe Biden, and he was still able to make huge gains in a place like that. So that is exactly where he needed to improve. And so now that's it. He won 312 electoral votes to Kamala Harris's 226. Places like New Hampshire were within 3 points. Minnesota was about a 4-ish point victory. Donald Trump still made gains in the Minneapolis area. He still made some gains. Hennepin didn't really shift that much more Republican. A little bit of a gain there, but not as much as I expected. And so that's why it stayed with Kamala Harris. But looking at that shift map, look how crazy that shift map is. We see the biggest left growing area in the entire country is the Atlanta suburbs. That is the fastest Democrat moving place in the entire country. Even places like in California, Los Angeles, 11 points more Republican. He cracked 32% in LA and ended up getting 1.2 million votes in the county. If we look at another place, for example, we could see over here, I believe, if we go to San Francisco, 8 points more Republican in San Francisco. Trump made huge gains in California. The state, believe it or not, was only about a 21-point victory for Kamala Harris. Not a great performance in the state of California, which is her home state, by the way. In her own state, she didn't even perform that well. Washington, I believe, is the only place in the entire country that actually ended up moving to the left of where it was from the last cycle. And a new swing state has developed, the state of New Jersey. This state, I said, was going to be about a 6.5-point victory for Harris. A lot of people didn't believe me, and that's exactly what ended up happening. She actually won it by 5.5. She actually underperformed my own expectation in the state of New Jersey. And the big shift came from a place like this. We see over here, Passaic County. Donald Trump won that county by 3 points, a very Democrat-leaning area. That county was a 16-point win for Joe Biden in the last cycle, and he made huge gains in a place like Passaic County, improved the margins in Monmouth, and also improved in Ocean County by quite a bit. And some of these Democrat areas, like the whole state moved to the right. Look at that. Union County, 12 points more Republican. Essex, 11 points more. And it was only a 5.5-point victory for Kamala Harris. Only a 5.5-point margin of victory. Look at this. Nassau County in New York. Donald Trump actually outright won the county in the state of New York. He actually outright won it. He actually won it by about 4 points. He won Suffolk by 10 points. We see here, and for example, Essex, he moved it quite a bit. I believe some of these counties haven't came in yet in New York City. I believe a lot of them have not. Let's see if we can do this shift map here. Yeah, no, a lot of them haven't came in yet. But like if we look at this, guys, 28% in Brooklyn for Donald Trump. Queens, 38%. He got 38% in Queens. If we look at the Bronx, he got 27% of the vote in Bronx. He almost cracked 100,000 there. So he did very, very well in that area. He did super duper well. And we look over here, we see it right here, Brooklyn, 28%. And if we look at a place like Staten Island, he actually won by 30 percentage points in Staten Island. So he made huge gains in a place like New York City and in the state of New York in general. He made huge gains there. A potential warning sign for Democrats that their base is disappearing very, very slowly. And so that is it for analyzing the map. But we should look at some of the reasons why this ended up happening. I have kept referencing this article for like forever. I've been analyzing this article for the longest time, ever since it dropped on September 24th of this year. It gave us insight into why Donald Trump was so favored. Party identification amongst voters was a Republican +3, 48% and 45%. We see party better able to handle most important problem. The Republicans were favored by 5 points. Those were the economy and immigration. That's why you saw big shifts in Arizona, big shifts in Texas, big shifts along the border, even in New Mexico, despite the state not being within 5. And we see U.S. satisfaction at 22%, similar to 1992 and similar to 1980, when there were landslides against the incumbent party, regardless if they were Republican or Democrat, and in 2008 as well, very similar to that as well. Economic confidence, -28, really bad score there. The last time it was that bad was in 1992 when it was a minus 37% confidence rating. And what happened to George H.W. Bush? He lost in an electoral college landslide. We see Party Better able to keep America prosperous. 6-point win for Donald Trump, a 6-point victory in the state. Presidential job approval, 39% for Joe Biden. I believe in RCP it's about 40 now, and that's about what it came out to in the exit polling, which means that my prediction would have been correct. Donald Trump would have beat Joe Biden by at least 345 in the electoral college, and probably would have even picked off New Jersey as well. Probably would have even gotten 359 in the electoral college. We actually also see here Republicans were slightly more favorable than Democrats. Republican plus 14 on Party Better, able to keep America safe from international threats. Very, very interesting. And so we see over here as well, looking at the voter analysis, this is very interesting. Donald Trump among men actually ended up winning by 12 points among men. He did extremely well with that group. But with women, Kamala Harris did in fact win them, but it wasn't by enough. It was not by enough. She only won this category by 6 points. People thought the gender gap was going to be huge. It was big, but not as big as they expected. And that was her downfall. And we see here that the electorate was like woman plus 9. And Kamala Harris still lost pretty bad because men broke for Donald Trump by way bigger margins than Kamala Harris. And then women did for Kamala Harris. We see the age groups. 18 to 29 only voted for Kamala Harris by 4 points. This group was like D plus like 20 something back in 2020 for Joe Biden. So there is a big shift among younger people, and that goes to Charlie Kirk at TPUSA. He is a big reason as to why that happened, as well as the economy definitely affected this age group quite tremendously. And the fact of the assassination attempt really appealed on social media. Donald Trump's podcasting also really appealed on social media as well. And that's why you saw such a big shift with that group. 45 to 64 was a +6 win for Donald Trump. And then seniors actually narrowed up from the last cycle because a lot of them are a lot older. They have a lot more income. And so what happened is during this economy, their assets inflated. So to them, the economy seemed just fine. So +65 ended up shifting to Kamala Harris. And now, as the older people are starting to basically die off, now the hippies from the 70s and the 80s, those are now the +65-year-old voters. So that's actually going to become the more liberal voting bloc for quite some time until things change. And we also see over here, if we were to look at the racial demographics, Trump went whites by about 13 points. He ended up getting 16% of black voters. He got 43% of Hispanics. Harris only got 55%. Other, which includes Asian and other demographics, ended up being roughly about a 14-point win for Kamala Harris. So she definitely underperformed with minority groups and underperformed with white voters as well, where Joe Biden, I believe, only lost them by like 11 or 12. And so we see here, Donald Trump absolutely ran up the score in this election cycle. We can even keep going over here and actually see, if we go to the education breakdown, we can see Donald Trump won this group by 13 points. So we see that there. But Kamala Harris also won college degree voters by 13. But non-college voters turned out more than last time. Or not more than last time, actually. It was actually a smaller margin. But the margin improved for Donald Trump with non-college degrees, but underperformed for Kamala Harris. And that ended up helping Donald Trump at the very end. We can also see that Donald Trump won white non-college voters by 30 points. White college only went to her by about 6. So we see that there. That's about right. That's kind of the margin I basically had for that group. And we see right here, look, if you're making 100K plus or more, that's a Democrat voting block now. That used to be a Republican voting block. And that's why Jeb Bush and all these people, or George W. Bush, was able to win Virginia and Colorado and New Hampshire because he did better with that voting block. And there's a lot more of those voters in those type of states. Now that that group is moving more Democrat because they're becoming more of the establishment, their assets inflated this time around. That's why you're seeing that shift to the left. And you see under 50,000 actually broke for Donald Trump. That is usually a Democrat constituency because a lot of them rely on government welfare, which Democrats have pushed that. But it seems like that group ended up breaking Republican now. Very, very interesting. That is very, very interesting stuff there. And we see that the electorate here was about R+5. according to the voter analysis on Fox News, when you lean the party ID, you actually see that it's Republican 49 to Democrat 44, and 6% of the electorate was independents. Kamala Harris actually won more Democrats than Trump ended up winning Republicans, but the Republicans made so much more up of the electorate that they actually ended up outvoting Democrats by a lot. And independents, Donald Trump improved with this group massively. We see that about 7% of them voted for another candidate, and Kamala Harris only won that group by about 6 points there. That's what we're kind of seeing. This is something very interesting. They actually divided not MAGA Republican and MAGA Republican, and we see here 36% of the electorate was MAGA Republican, and they broke for Trump by more than they did. You see 21% of non-MAGA Republicans voted for Kamala Harris. So you're going to start seeing that group also start shifting further and further away from Republicans as time goes on. And a lot of that has to do with Georgia. A lot of that has to do with Virginia, North Carolina. So those states might end up becoming a problem later on for somebody like a J.D. Vance come the 2028 election. We also see here, if we were to go look at the ideologies, 38% of the electorate was conservative. We see 33% was moderate, and the vote share was roughly split evenly among conservative and liberal. And moderates, Kamala Harris won them easily, but there was a lot more conservative voters than there were liberal or moderate voters, and that's what won Trump the popular vote. We also see here that suburban voters, Kamala Harris only won them by 5, and Trump did way better. Or actually, the even break is about the same between urban and rural, but we see that rural turnout was way higher this cycle. That's also a really, really big thing as well. The religion breakdown is really interesting. Protestant, Trump won those by quite a bit, 61 to 37. Catholic, Trump won those by 11 points. Biden actually won that group by a lot last time. He won the group by roughly a similar margin, and Trump completely flipped on its head. A lot of them are in the Northeast. That's why you're seeing such big shifts in the Northeast for Donald Trump. We see here Muslim voters end up breaking Harris by 30 points, which is way smaller than what it was in 2020 for Biden. Jewish voters, about 31 points there as well. So again, really, really interesting stuff. Very, very interesting stuff here that we see here. And now we go over here. People who say, how often do you attend a religious service? At least monthly. 38% of the electorate. Trump won that group by a lot. And then less often, 62% of the electorate. But that was a smaller margin for Kamala. So very, very interesting. We see her gun owner right now. Gun owner self, 31%. Gun in the house, 14%. So not even the majority of the electorate has a gun in their household, but that group broke for Donald Trump by way bigger margins than the no category did. So again, very interesting. Veterans broke for Trump by 18 points. Veteran in the household broke for Trump by about 12. And 75% of the electorate said no, broke for Harris by about 2 points. So veterans definitely ended up moving the election to the right. That's something very, very interesting. They ended up kind of pushing the election to Donald Trump, as at least people that had veterans in their household. That voting bloc really moved the race to the Republicans because of things like the Afghanistan failure of a pullout that Joe Biden had. Unions, we see Kamala Harris won that group by 10, but it's only 18% of the electorate. Trump won non-union households by 4. So unions actually made the electorate slightly more Democrat, but they weren't as big of a margin as they were last time in the 2020 election. Married voters ended up breaking for Trump more than not married voters were. So very interesting. Married women, not married women are the only category that ended up breaking to Kamala Harris. Very, very interesting that this is the case. That's about 27% of the electorate right there. And so that is it for this, guys. And we see here, Donald Trump, look at this. Kamala Harris, do you think she's a strong leader? 46% said yes. 53% said no. Very, very interesting. And even though 53% said no, 10 of them still voted for Kamala Harris. Very, very weird. Kamala Harris is honest and trustworthy. 52% said no. 47% said yes. I wonder if they have these questions for Donald Trump. Very, very interesting. People actually also agree that Kamala Harris has the moral character to be the president, but a lot of them who said yes ended up voting for Donald Trump. So that is really, really interesting. And we see here, does Donald Trump look out for people like you? 3% no, like it's a margin of 3%. Look at this. Would you say Donald Trump is a strong leader? Look at that. Yes, 56% to 44% no. However, a lot of the people who said yes, he is a strong leader ended up breaking to Kamala Harris. We see here Donald Trump, 58% to 41%, honest and trustworthy. Very, very interesting. So a lot of people think he's not trustworthy, but a lot of those people who said that he's not ended up breaking to him in the general election. People say who's a strong leader ended up breaking to him by quite a bit, but a lot of people said, yes, he is a strong leader. A lot of them broke towards Kamala Harris. So the electorate is still very, very partisan as of right now. Very, very partisan electorate. 3% margin on would Donald Trump bring positive change? So we see that there as well. However, 6% of the people who said yes ended up voting for Kamala Harris. Very, very interesting. Will Donald Trump be able to handle a crisis? 11% margin on the yes, but we see that a lot of them broke towards Kamala Harris as well. So very weird about this kind of stuff. Very weird. And we even see here, would you say Donald Trump has the moral character to be president? Look, more people say Kamala Harris does than Donald Trump does. However, a lot of people who said no ended up voting for Donald Trump. Very interesting indeed. And so that is pretty much it for this, guys. This was an autopsy on why Donald Trump ended up winning the 2024 presidential election. If we look over here and look at the polling was a little bit more accurate this time around, but still was off by a little bit. If we see here, Donald Trump ended up winning the popular vote by 1.8% as of right now. The polling average was Trump plus 0.1. If we go to the left over here, we can see Donald Trump outperformed his vote share by 3 points yet again, and Kamala outperformed hers by about 1 point. So that's something to point out as well. But he's always consistently outperformed his vote share in the polling by about 3 points or so. That's always what he's done, give or take 2 to 3 points. Minimum is what he outperforms it by. And so just looking at that, you knew he was going to get over 49% in the popular vote. Guys, hit the like button and subscribe if you want to see more content just like this. And we will see you guys in the next video. If you enjoyed this clip from the podcast, hit the like button and subscribe for more content just like this.